Hello and welcome to the Malika Writes channel. My name is Malika Writes and today I'm going to be doing a review of I Am John by Robert Bly. I apologise if my voice sounds weird. I am recovering from, I think it's a flu. I don't know what it is. I just know that my voice sounds horrible right now. And I apologise if that sort of translates in the video. I apologise also if there are any distractions and sort of noises in the background. Somebody is letting off fireworks for whatever reason. I don't know. Don't know if it's a special occasion. There's just fireworks in the background. So, the tale is originally written down by the Grimm's brothers, and it's a story about this boy, this prince of another kingdom, who encounters this wild man and how that encounter impacts his life. So I think it was an excellent read. I'm going to try and not give a lot of spoilers because I really do think this is a read that people should this is something that people should read, not just men but women as well, if you just want to understand the men in your life and know how to help them. I do think it's an important read, and I think it emphasizes the importance of a father figure and the importance of having a guild of men. So the book sort of provides this really great analysis of how the male story works, and I think that it does it very well. Did I agree with absolutely everything that was written in there? No. But the things I disagreed with were not the story necessarily. I disagreed with things like the analysis of Christianity, for example. That was really all I disagreed with. Everything else I agreed with. I agreed with the way it analysed the male story. Obviously it was written by a man, but that wasn't the main reason I agreed with it, because I agreed with the content of the book. But it being written by a man sort of did give it some extra weight because I think he knew exactly where he was coming from. So, let's see. The book discusses several topics, or should I say several stages of the male journey. So you have childhood, adolescence and adulthood. In childhood, it discusses how the family dynamic plays a part in how a boy is shaped, and how that interaction will play a role in how much he struggles later in life. In fact, the parents are, and not necessarily society itself, but the parents are the main characters in this play that organise how this boy's life will sort of turn out. Mothers are very good at ensuring that life can flourish within an environment that she has control over. However, when it comes to encountering the outside world, that's kind of the father's job. He's there not just to provide the boundaries of the home, but he's also there to prepare the child to meet the outside world. So he schools his children in how to encounter the world, and I think fathers do that for boys and for girls, but especially for boys because, boys tend to listen to their fathers a bit more, though they may have a softer side towards their mothers, but they do tend to actually hear what their fathers are saying more than their mothers. I think it's like the difference between your mum telling you to sort of clean your room and someone like Jordan Peterson, for example, telling you to clean your room. For men, that's a different sort of dynamic. Because I think when your mum is telling you to clean your room, it's kind of like you're cleaning your room because it keeps the house tidy, and that's her way of ensuring that you maintain an environment of order within the boundaries that she controls. But let's say for men, for example, when Jordan Peterson tells you to clean your room, it's sort of clean your room because everything in your life depends on your ability to master the small elements of your life. So if you can't clean your room, then everything else is going to be beyond your control because you can't manage this very small part of your life. I hope that makes sense. So when it comes to women in terms of teaching boys how to, and even their girls, how to live out in the world, it's more of a difficult job, because as a woman, especially in the West, there is always going to be some kind of support system, because women have children. So many societies have built themselves around the fact that women at some point will be unable to work. So there is always sort of a kind of, even if it's a basic and ineffective system, but there is a system in place in order to ensure that if a woman cannot work, there is something there to support her, because human societies understand that the female is vulnerable at the time when she is with child or when she's taking care of an infant. So that's why we've always had a policy of kind of women and children first, because we understand that very real vulnerability. And I think that in the book it sort of portrays what happens when you have an excess of sort of a female environment around boys. There is an example given in the book, where a boy who was sort of raised by a single mother lashes out at his mum, not necessarily because he hates her, but because the excess of feminine energy doesn't really sit well with him, and it causes him to lash out. I've mentioned in other videos that an excess of femininity in men doesn't necessarily give birth to this kind, gentle, compassionate sort of man. It actually manifests something different, where we have a man who is volatile, more inclined to engage in violent acts. That's sort of the result that we get, which is interesting, because the rhetoric has been, men, get in touch with your feminine side. And I think a certain amount of femininity in men is important, because you do have to explore your softer side. And we see this in characters like Aragorn. He's not just a warrior and a king, he's also a healer, he's also gentle, he kisses Boromir on the head. His emotions are not a stranger to him, and I think that's very important, and it definitely shows in this book. Here, when the main character gives his gold coins to the gardener's children to play with, that's sort of a caring thing. He cares for those in his charge, a bit like Boromir, who has a very good relationship with the hobbits and ends up actually sacrificing his life to save them. So I think obviously cultivating that femininity in men as well is an important thing, but you have to ensure that you're not doing it too much. You have to ensure that the ratio is correct. And I talk about ratio because balance is not the word that's appropriate, because when we have a balance, we assume we have an equal amount of everything. But when it's a ratio, we know that one is in excess above the other. And in men, masculinity is supposed to outweigh your feminine side. And in women, your feminine side is supposed to outweigh your masculine side. So I think that the book does this very well. It explains this very well. And in a way that I don't think you could even find this offensive unless you were the most left-leaning of feminists. I don't think you could find this offensive. It does it in a very sort of a very diplomatic way. So this brings us to a question that I've been having in my comments section, and I think the latest person who asked me was Mika Woodward. So this is my attempt to answer this question. I've danced around this a little bit because I didn't want to be too prescriptive. And the question I've been asked over and over is, how do men stand up? I've talked about why they don't. I've talked about men not standing up in general, but I haven't necessarily talked about how to stand up for masculinity. And I think this is because I haven't wanted to sort of be too prescriptive. I haven't wanted to say, okay, do this, because at the end of the day, I am a woman. I don't have to deal with the issues that are specific to men. and I don't want to be here sort of telling you what to do. However, I do think that there are basic things that you can do, which I've outlined in other videos. For example, my the importance of a code of conduct video, I think was a way of standing up for masculinity, and I think people would benefit from watching that video. So I really just want to give some basic things, and even when I talk about masculinity, I try to steer away from how a man should look, how a man should sort of how a man should look. I sort of try to go back to the values, to the underlying things that are important. And I think again it refers to that question of why is a woman talking about this, because these are things that can be studied, these are concepts that anyone can study. However, when it comes to living out the concept, I do think that men are probably in a better position to tell you how exactly to live that out. But what I can do is basically tell you the values that you need to cultivate that will make that journey easier. One of the things I really want to do is do some collaborations with men, with older men who can speak to you guys, with men that I trust and men that I think that have been really helpful to me. Some of them are in the comment section, but I really do want to create an environment where it's not just me talking. So in future videos, hopefully, I'll be able to set that up where it's men talking to you guys, and also for the women who follow me as well, to get some women to talk about femininity. I have some friends who are great at this topic, who are also older than me, so have a little bit more experience than I do. So yeah, let's get to answering that question as best as I can. So why are men not standing up for masculinity? I've addressed that one. I think it's because of this thing that we lack, which is discipline, diligence, and integrity. So my obvious answer for how men can stand up for masculinity is to cultivate discipline, diligence, and integrity. So, and I think it's important to focus on character, because your money, your wealth, status, family, your health, it can all be taken away from you, but your character can never be taken away from you. That is something you will always have. And I think that is what makes the person, that is what makes you a man. It's your character. So cultivate discipline, diligence, and integrity. And so how can you do that? The first step is to develop a code. You need something that you believe in. If you don't have a code of conduct, then you don't have anything that you can say no to. You need to know what you will do and the things that you will not do. You need to know basically your price and your cutoff. So people often say that everyone has a price. Like if you just give people enough money, they will do anything. You need to know the things that even if they gave you all the world's money, you would still not do it. That's what I mean when you have a code of conduct. You need to know what you will do and you will not do. You need to have a set of values that you stick to. And if you don't, then you are just kind of a loose cannon. You have no kind of authority over you. And that's dangerous for a person, because if you don't, and I don't necessarily mean government, even though the fact that we have a working government sort of created the environment that we can flourish in. But I'm talking more about self-governance. You do need to have a set of morals that you adhere to, because if not, you will find that you live a very unsatisfactory life. There is power in saying no, and you need to know what things you are going to say no to. So I think that's the first step. And this step can take years. It can take you years to find out what you believe in and what you can say no to. But it's a process you have to take. If not, you are going to put yourself in a position where you do things that you come to regret. It's not about restricting yourself so that you do nothing, but it's about making sure that you have boundaries. And I think that's really important, not just for women, but especially for men. If you are supposed to be the bringers of order, the ones who define the sort of boundaries and put things in a way that can create, that can have the potential to create an environment that people can live in and be safe in, then you do have to have that in yourself. It begins with you. Hence why Jordan Peterson sort of went famous for saying clean your room. It starts with you. Charity begins at home. So the next thing I would sort of want to say is that once you have that code of honor, once you have that code of conduct, you know your values, it's about sticking to it. A lot of people have things they believe in. They kind of know what they want to stick to. They kind of know the sort of person they want to be. But now the problem is sticking to it. And we all have trouble with this. No one is perfect at sticking to their values. That's part of the reason why we still do things that we don't want to do. And that's okay. It's okay to falter sometimes. But what is not okay is to sort of stay there in that environment. And I do think that's where integrity comes in. Because integrity is about sticking to your guns and being... And it's not necessarily about being stubborn and sticking to a belief that is faulty or sticking to something that doesn't make sense. It's about being strong enough to stand by your beliefs, but being humble enough to learn. And that's kind of what you need to do. So that was what I would advise. It's about continuously learning as well, because you do need to continue to feed your mind. My parents always say that everything can be taken away from you, but what you put into yourself is what you take to the grave. You know, my mum says you're only buried with so many watches or jewelry. You're only buried with so many clothes. You know, you can put in your will to be buried with all your favourite shoes, but your coffin can only take so much. So in that sense, there is no point of holding on to material or finding your value in material. It's about what you put in yourself. And that is what I would advise. And what I mean putting in yourself, of course, educate yourself. Of course, add to your personal knowledge so that you can come across as intelligent, or so that you can have interesting conversations. But when I'm talking about value, I'm talking about your intrinsic character. I'm talking about the sort of person that you are, not necessarily what you know. So I don't want people to get confused with that. Being a smart person doesn't necessarily make you a better person. It's about what kind of person you are. And that's what I mean when I say keep feeding yourself, as well as keep feeding your knowledge of the world. Because like we've talked about with Aragorn before, his knowledge of the world was vast. I mean, he knew about the Valar, he knew the law of the elves, he knew a lot of things about the world. He was a healer. Being a healer, you do kind of need to know about herbology. You need to know about the world of plants and how they function. So do your best to cultivate your character. Do your best to continue to feed the inner person, because that is the most important part. So the last thing I would say is pick up responsibility, because I believe we were put on this earth to contribute to it. So look for something to positively contribute to the earth. And sorry, my cold or flu or whatever it is kind of getting the better of me, but look for something that will look for a cross to bear. So Jordan Peterson says take up a load. Christians say pick up your cross. Pick up a cross and bear it, because that's part of being an adult. When you're a child, your parents bear your cross. When you're an adult, you take it up yourself. That's part of growing up. Bear some sort of responsibility. That could be taking care of those in your charge. That could be doing an excellent job at your workplace. That could be, you know, picking up your life and using that time that you're given here on the earth to improve the lives of others. Pick up something that makes you work, because I do believe that as human beings there is a certain pleasure in work. When you do something and you get a job done nicely, there is a sort of satisfaction. You know, in the Bible, when sort of God creates the world, he says it is good. There is a pleasure in looking at what you have done and saying that is good. And even if you come back 10 years later and look at it and go, well, I could have done a bit better, but knowing that you gave it your all at that point in time, that satisfaction is sort of unmatched. So that is in everything. If you're a parent raising your children to the best of your ability, there is a satisfaction in labor. And I think as a society, we have to bring that back. I don't mean labor for the sake of chasing money. I mean labor for the sake of doing a job well, in looking at what you have produced and going, well, I did that well. And I think that is something, as a society, as individuals, that is something we need to cultivate again, because it has been lost. We have given ourselves this precedent of chasing money, and we have forgotten the pleasure in doing a good job. And I think that's something we need to bring back. And I think that's something that men need to remember as well. You, for the most part, have been viewed as the breadwinners. So your main objective has always kind of been to bring back money. But I do think that for the sake of personal development, for the sake of character, for the sake of taking advantage of the security that we have built in the West, and for the most part around the world as well, I do think that now is an opportune time to reclaim that pleasure in getting getting work done and doing it properly. So I think that's one of the things that men can do to stand up for masculinity, is to take pleasure in work and to do work properly. So that's what I wanted to say in terms of answering that question. I hope I've answered it well. It's something I'm probably going to discuss a lot on this channel. I'm probably going to come back to it, but I honestly believe that if we could just cultivate discipline, diligence and integrity, the world would be so much better. Your lives would be so much better. And it's not something you're going to get right every single time. So don't expect perfection. But if you have the general posture of exhibiting these values, of living out these values, then I think that people will be a lot happier. I think that people would feel more satisfied. And I think when we have discipline, we understand that it's not necessarily about chasing immediate happiness, because we live in a culture that prioritizes immediate gratification. We don't want to work because we want it now. Give it to me now. That is not going to work. We have to go back to, I wouldn't say go back to a time, because there wasn't really a time that we had the time to sort of enjoy work necessarily, but I would say cultivating an environment that we can enjoy work, that we can enjoy hard work. And that is difficult to do, because sometimes it's backbreaking, sometimes it's mentally exhausting, sometimes it doesn't feel great. But I think if we can appreciate the struggle, if we can understand that the pain we're going through will lead to a better end, it will make that destination a lot better. So we need to, as individuals, cultivate that in ourselves, that discipline, diligence and integrity. So I'm going to end this video here. Thank you so much for everyone who suggested that book. I'm going to sort of work on reading the others so I can give reviews. And yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell and share this with whoever you think will enjoy this. So thank you for watching. Have a lovely day. And this has been the Malika Writes channel.